Here we go. We're talking about how to make an impact, how to make an impact with your grant funding. This is how to use grant funding to make the most impact, the best ways to make the best use of grant funding. And this is not going to take long. It's real simple. Grant funding is not free money, it's money that you receive in advance of implementing or enhancing a program. It can be a new program launch. It can also be funding for a program enhancement or expansion. You might be expanding your clientele. You might be going into a different area of expanding who you serve, but it's either to initiate a program or to improve a program. Put it like that. And so grant funding typically works like that, particularly for working with nonprofits, serving communities for a public general benefit. Nonprofits serving community for a public general benefits. This is not related to grants for artists or anything like that. So take that out of consideration. This is primarily for nonprofits and organizations working with programs that are for the general benefit of the community. And so when we say this and when we deal with this, here's what we need to consider. These are the primary ways that we can best use grant funding. It breaks down to two, mainly two: staff and stuff, right? It comes down to staff, the people, and stuff, the equipment, the hardware, those things. Staff and stuff are the two things that you can use and use the funding for that will best benefit and improve your program for the greatest impact. Staff. What do we mean by that? Using funding to pay people, right, to implement and provide the program or its services to clients. Think about it like this. We talk a lot about um, theory and rhetoric and all of that, but the nuts and bolts of this means that somebody has to run the program. Someone has to do the evaluation. Someone has to track what's happening with all the key components in order to aggregate the data and come up with an evaluation of the program. That has to happen with somebody in place, receiving a salary, receiving benefits. All of that comes down to your finance people as well as your HR department working with you in your program development to design job descriptions that best get you the top candidates that can fulfill those roles. That's staff. Staff run, operate the program, and that's how that works. Then you need stuff. You need stuff to make it happen. I don't know if your program requires heavy duty equipment, if it requires iPads, if it requires you to have a kitchen, a pantry, whatever it may be that you're doing, your stuff, right? Your stuff, your equipment needs to be included in what you have as set aside for purchases because that's going to impact how efficient or effective you can be in delivering your program to your clientele. How do we know this? Well, stuff matters, right? If you don't have your stuff together in an orderly place and fashion, you can run the risk of your inventory being taken out by theft, right? Someone else can just pick up your stuff and leave with it. So you have to secure your stuff. You have to have a safe place for your stuff. You have to have a place where stuff, depending on what type of services you provide, can be maintained and set aside for continual use. Now, here's the caveat to all this. That's what I'm saying. since stuff primarily has to be operated by people, staff is your primary priority, not the stuff. Get it? Get it? Hope you got it. And so, since you need staff more than you need stuff, the alternative to using grant funding for stuff is to, one, get stuff that's donated, probably more gently used, previous model, not the latest model. And you could also look at getting stuff that's discounted for nonprofits through different networks, collaborations, things of that nature. And I say that because at the end of the day, you'll still need staff to operate your stuff. You'll still need staff to operate your stuff. And so if you can do this in a manner to where you can operate your stuff, have a staff on hand that's competent and capable of carrying out and operating your program, then you can maximize your grant funding for the most impact. It can happen, but you have to do it in a way to where you are not so much losing money, but where you are not leaving all your options on the same page, where you're not leaving your money on the table, where you're not leaving everything up in the air. You want to make sure that you have all that you need in place in order to do the best that you can to maximize your grant funding in order to make the most impact. God bless.